And that's how I learned Ginsu knives can cut through human bone. Oh, hello. I didn't realize this was on. Didn't see you there.
Really?
Yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pseudopod. Wait. Wrong.
Do you want to come out and come back in again?
Hold on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. I'm Alistair, your host. And 8 feet to my right is the amazing... My left is the amazing Marguerite, who'll be in the chat with you tonight.
You're on the right. Hello, everyone.
And welcome to the final installment of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. For those of you who are new, and in fact, for those of you who are here just all the time, welcome. I know there are folks here from the Isle of Man sometimes. I know we've got a lot of Magnus Archives fans, a lot of Pseudopod fans, some Pseudopod staff, some Escape Artist staff, some York people. All of you, I am delighted beyond words to have you here, and especially this week, because it's kind of a lot out there, huh? I mean, wow. Seriously.
Apparently, Fox News just cut away from Trump campaign press conference in Pennsylvania to call Michigan for Biden, which I'm sure must have made him oh so happy.
If you'll indulge me for a moment, just for a second, suck it. Moving on. First of all, massive thanks to Perry Scribbles for our just incredibly moody Peter Lucas opening fan art. I love that. It's like an album cover.
It does look like an album cover. I love it.
And secondly, for everybody, a brief rundown of what we're going to be doing today. This week is going to be what I like to call an emotion sandwich. We will be opening with our usual opening monologue, which is an excuse for you to get comfortable, get situated, make sure pets and significant others are fed, that you've taken any meds you need, that you have food, that you've hydrated, all of that good stuff. Then we will delve in briefly into what's new with me this week.
A lot.
And with me, I mean us. And then we will do the final part of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. A PSA up front, literally all the emotional content of this book is in these 3 chapters. This has 2 immediate consequences. Firstly, if you're thinking, is this going to wreck me the same way the final 25 minutes of Return of the King did? You get a prize. Secondly, as a semi-professional narrator, I need to tell you up front, there's absolutely no chance I am getting through all of this without busting up. Just none at all. I lost it 3 times in the rehearsal. So, you are literally about to see a grown man cry. Have fun.
I love you. I'm proud of you.
And then after, I love you too. And then after that, we will go on to some shenanigans, and we have an exciting poll for you due to an actual legitimate temporal anomaly.
Should I come cop to this?
No, because there's nothing to cop to, but you should show up on camera anyway.
Okay, so here's what happened. I did the math wrong. I thought we were finishing next week, not this week. So next week, we currently don't have anything scheduled. And then the week after that, we're going to have Ursula. So we have a dead week, and we're going to take a poll about what to do during the dead week. And it's my fault. I'm chopping this up to, baby producer status. But yeah, I'm going to need your help.
It's all good, Tom.
Okay.
And thank you, folks. Also...
Look what arrived today.
Oh, Wendy. Oh, Wendy. You have excelled yourself.
Are you going to read this?
Would you like to?
No. You need to read this.
Remember the 5th of November. Pipe murders, spiders, and rot. Ceaselessly gaze upon this wretched hat, lest Chungus be forgot. He has cosplay now. More of it.
We tried to think if we could somehow make him an anonymous mask, but I don't have one small enough, so...
Yet. We don't have one small enough. Yet.
I'm not... That's as far as I get into wardrobing. It will just get too expensive if we go down this rabbit hole.
Okay, so, everybody ready?
Opening monologue?
Opening monologue. Ladies, gentlemen, everybody, it brings me tremendous pleasure, especially this week, to welcome back our house band, Mr. Nate Crowley, with Does Watch Dogs Legion contain a single NPC I could bear to hang out with? Which is subtitled Crisis on Infinite Geezers. Let us begin. As you'll probably know by now, Watch Dogs Legion's big boast is its Play As Anyone feature, where you can recruit and subsequently play as any one of 9 million procedurally generated Londoners. As I done said in my review, it works as advertised. Sort of. This level of simulation is dead impressive and can lead to some interesting situations. but it leads to a lot of weird ones too. Regardless of how well Ubisoft have concealed the practical limitations of this, frankly, extraordinary system, we're just not at a point in game design where you can automate the generation of a character's appearance, backstory, and personality, and have them walk out of the process as a compelling and believable human being. Nightmare Future London, therefore, is a great big stroll through the uncanny valley. At best, potential recruits feel like NPCs created on the spur of the moment by a tabletop GM accommodating a player's insistence on talking to absolutely everyone in a throwaway tavern scene. A fake laugh hiding real pain. That was me. At worst, they're about the same, but if the GM in question was in the final stages of a grueling 3-day ale monstering, and to top it all off, in addition to their so near yet so far position humanity, they all seem really annoying, thanks to the selection of extremely online hobbies and interests the game populates their biographies with. Anyway, I thought I'd conduct a sort of half-assed Voight-Kampf test to see if I could find an NPC in Watch Dogs Legion who seemed like they might make for at least passable company, were I a dystopian resistance fighter. The sampling has been pretty random. I travelled to each borough in the game using my magical future phone to download the personal profiles of the first people I saw, and screenshotted the lot. I will now go through them one by one, judging their worthiness and moving on when I inevitably decide that they are just unbearable. Here we go. Angus Miller. Angus almost seemed alright, to be fair. Strong start. Anyone willing to be a climatologist in the Nightmare Future is probably a pretty solid geezer, and they've even submitted an article to a science journal. Admittedly, they also sell elbow fetish videos, but I don't want to yuck their yum. It was all going so well until I noticed that Angus's face is perpetually stuck doing the people's elbow, a la Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the 90s. I checked. It's
the 90s. The 90s. He's never stopped doing it. He's still doing it. It's 2020.
I checked. It's always like that. I imagine him as always being one sentence away from finding a way to make the conversation about elbows, and I think that would get uncomfortable quickly. Next up, Shema Amia, reality TV star. What a fucking bin fire of a human being. Apart from anything else,
content warning.
Swears.
And improbable humans.
Apart from anything else, who joined the Conservative Party at age 18? That's chilling for a start. No wonder she screenshotted an article on coping with feeling hopeless. But I'm sorry, if the subheading for your entire presence on Earth is Banned for Life from London Zoo, you are no friend of mine. Straight into the canal with her. Next.
Into the sea.
Brian Silver, investor, has a private phone line to the police commissioner. I don't know whether it's the Morpheus specs, but this guy has the energy of a role played by a young Lawrence Fishburne in a straight-to-VHS movie about sad policemen. And indeed, it turns out Brian does have a private phone line to the commish himself, so he's well in with the fuzz. I must say he looks astonishing for a man of 60 years old. Maybe it's all those vaccinations.
Maybe it's all those what?
Maybe it's all those vaccinations he refuses to take. Still, even if it wasn't for that little yikes, the fact Brian describes his job as investor without any further details means he's almost certainly a scammer. Search history backed it up Search history backs it up too. Sorry, Brian, I'm inoculated against bullshit. Next. Abbas Ibrahim, programmer. Frequent purchases, small single-board computers. Ah, yes, it's Cyclops from X-Men reimagined as a dejected incel on Christmas Day. Do click the link, because that's a terrifyingly good description. He does like cricket, but I know nothing about the sport, so we wouldn't have any common ground there. And besides that, Abbas seems mostly interested in chemtrails, as well as getting wankered and doing parkour. Disaster of a man, actually. Quite like his Necron Christmas jumper, but that's not enough to save him. Next. Bronwyn Moss, games journalist. Suspect in 2022 Gatwick Airport drone incident. Look, I'm not proud, but I was quite taken with Bronwyn at first. She's a sharp dresser. I love the Welsh, and I'm always partial to a woman implicated in a drone incident. However, then I got to games journalist and £109,000 salary a year, and couldn't stop laughing. Sorry, Bronwyn, you cannot possibly exist. Next. Graham Anderson, cryptocurrency analyst, studied malware protection. Graham almost got away with the fact that he's a cryptocurrency analyst, with the fact that he plays melodica in a reggae band. That, after all, is an extraordinary sort of power. But the fact he's climbed Everest as well, and he's into sharing articles, I don't know. There's nothing ostensibly awful here. We're close. But Graham feels like the sort of bloke whose personality is exactly like the fake personality assumed by the Twitter account of an obnoxious fintech startup.
Oh, God.
And I want to avoid him like a bin bag of dog food in midsummer. I want us to stop and walk around that sentence briefly. I want to avoid him like a bin bag of dog food in midsummer. Nate is an artist.
Congratulations, you're in double digits already.
Levent Topuzoglu. Ah, finally the hero we deserve. Part Gandhi, part Elf Garnet, all champion. Levent was doddering along the street extremely slowly when I found him, and when engaged with in conversation had a proper growly Cockney accent. And unlike everyone else in the game, there's nothing needlessly techie in his background. He just likes cars, and mares, and efficiency. He wants to be a bit more careful with his thumbs, but that's no reason to cast him into the dark. Welcome to the Resistance, Levent. I'm sure we'll get along just fine. And there you go. Thank you, as ever, the magnificent Mr. Crowley. So what's new with that? Bin bag of dog food in midsummer. Oh, it's an album title. It truly is.
Definitely sounds like an album title, or is it like somebody's one-act play?
A bin bag of dog food in midsummer. The canal lies stagnant and empty. Only here, at the edge of human consciousness.
Stop it, Werner! Stop it! Don't go further.
I love Werner. So what's
apparently IFC, so the film council in, is it New York?
Mm-hmm.
Has awesome T-shirts which are art
I've
directors mashed up with like heavy metal bands, and it's like the Misfit symbol with Werner on the top or something.
Oh no, it's the Danzig symbol, but instead of Danzig, it's Herzog.
Oh, I love it.
I may need one. I really may need one. So what's new with me this week? Well, a whole bunch. I keep being commissioned for journalism.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
It's not. It's
just it's taking time.
I get to the point where I'm like, fine, okay, I get it. This isn't for me. It's all right. No one's picking up pitches, and then suddenly someone goes, "Hello, could you pitch me?" Yeah, here you go. Here's something weird and esoteric. We like that. Could we pay you for it? Yes. Do you have anything else? Well, here's something else which is weirder and more esoteric. Could we pay you more for that one? Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm dealing with that at the moment. And also we're oversubscribed. We talked about this earlier today, there's a lot going on at the moment, and this week in particular, with all looking at it's especially noticeable. But we're coming up on a week into November, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do Nano. Because I haven't had time to prep. And that's fine. But I want to be able to get to the point where things are a little bit more manageable. And we've talked a lot today about how to stack projects up in a manner that they can be done where it's like more simple and more effective and more fun, and actually takes time for fun. Which leads me to the lead I'm burying, which is it's our 10-year anniversary tomorrow.
Yeah, we remembered on time this time.
We have.
Do you want to tell everybody that story?
Oh, what? Just walking along. Seriously, walking along.
You're walking me back from the train. This was in Milton Keynes.
Yes, we were like a mile uphill in Milton Keynes in this barren pedestrian utopia. I loved it. And
it wasn't barren. It was safe, and it had straight lines and right corners, and I never got lost. I loved it.
I have recently described Milton Keynes as a town designed by the CIA to acclimate people to the UK slowly. And Marguerite suddenly went, "Oh shit! What? It's our anniversary tomorrow. What? Oh, it is." And several times it's just passed us by completely. But this time,
I set an alarm and everything.
We are all up on that. So, tomorrow we are doing things.
Well, it's our 10th anniversary, and the 10-year anniversary is supposed to be diamond jewelry. But I don't want any diamond jewelry, and you don't want any diamond jewelry. And we couldn't go anywhere and do anything even if we wanted to. So we're going to watch diamond heist movies instead, because that sounds good.
And cook and play video games. And
yes. I got a beast to roast.
And not work.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part. Good luck with that.
So that's going on. The Enthusiasm episode for horror has dropped. I don't know when the next one is arriving.
They arrive on Fridays, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't had time. I'm sorry, but it's on my phone.
It's fine. It's fine, dude. One time my dad made me buy an anniversary card for my mum on the day of their anniversary while he waited in the car. Yes, I've had those.
Can we not?
No.
Okay, good. Okay. By the way, say congratulations to Jax and Z.
Massive congratulations to Jax and Z.
They got married.
I just buy a really nice lake as well.
It was a very pretty photo. I liked it a whole lot.
Those photos, you guys, that was adorable.
Very adorable. So yeah, that's what's going on. We're trying to do less and failing. We're not going to talk about the thing that is going on because we must not invoke its pain.
Aside from one thing, there's actually I've got a single perfect useful tip for this, which I'm actually trying to take forward out of the situation into future ones. Which is a couple of nights ago when all of this was starting to kick off, I made the mistake of looking at my Twitter feed just as I was going to bed, and it actually gave me the fear.
Yeah, we went to bed at about 2 o'clock this morning as a result.
Capital T, capital F, and I was just scrolling through it going, oh God, oh, and the reason for that is you got everyone reacting in real time, and everyone has different sources, and everyone's making the same point in different ways, blah, 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 blah. No one's reaction is valid, but when you just get a fire hose of them, it's really distressing. So the only Twitter account I've looked at about this for the last 24 hours is the Associated Press. Because if the Associated Press reports something, it's happened. And that just has calmed me down so much. It's been great. So if you are looking for a means to turn down the shrieky, oh Jesus, what the hell, on this, I would recommend that. Just pick a single source you trust and hold on to it.
Look. Jackson Z put it you bought them a big boy pan.
A big boy pan.
Yes, big boy pan.
Yes.
The photo was fantastic, you guys. I really love that. We're going to have to put that in the stream notes. I'll DM it to you so you can put it in the stream notes.
Brilliant, please do.
Stream notes.
Upcoming stuff. Next week, as has been discussed, we have a brief temporal anomaly, which I'm really happy about. Seriously, I am. I love them.
Well, then you're welcome.
Yeah.
How lovely for you.
Hey, look, Frank, it's a toaster.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then we will have Ursula on. The first question, I promise, will not be, so the final 3 chapters. What the hell, man? Although it may be a variant on that. And then on the 25th of November, Johnny Big Streams will be all up in the Jesus, where we will discuss things like his horror debut and what he's doing next, and
stuff and things.
Yes, and in both cases, I believe we're going to experiment with questions from the chat also.
Yeah. We'll see how that's going to run.
Splendid.
So what we're going to do is, after the story and after the recovery, and while you are doing shenanigans, I'm going to put up a poll with some options for what we're going to do in the Dead Week next week.
Marguerite, please tell Jax how to use that big boy pan.
Yes, I have many recipes. I will totally help you learn how to do. You can do everything in cast iron. It's brilliant, and it's the frying pan that people always use in cartoons to hit people with. It's a melee weapon and a cooking staple. I have my grandmother's.
I love her so very much.
Yes, they're amazing.
Okay, let's do it.
Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Okay, everybody, brace. Just a reminder.
Absolutely the Rapunzel-style frying pan.
Exactly.
Which reminds me of the Chuck, because he is Chuck, as far as I'm concerned, sword fighting with the horse entangled, going, just so you know, this is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me.
Exactly.
Brief recap. Mona, wizard girl.
Brief recap. It's the whole book.
Wizard girl who is unusually gifted with bread and basically nothing else. Happy life. Dead girl in bakery. Investigates it. Framed. Attempt made on her life. Aided by Spindle, street kid goes into hiding. Also aided by Knackering Mole, one of the other magic users in the city, who is, it emerges over time, an ex-veteran, or a veteran, and whose power is over horses. Dead or alive. Spindle and... Alive!
Sorry. Spontaneous Bon Jovi break.
Spindle and Mona climb up a toilet. I know I mention this every week, but I actually really love that bit. Climb up the Duchess's toilet and tell her that the city is being taken over from the inside. And the Duchess is like, I know, I'm really sorry, I can't do anything. And because these kids are just terrifying badasses, they're like, I think we're going to go over this again. And the Duchess begins to fight back, and they successfully throw Lord Oberon out of the city, only for him to return with the mercenary army that he's been gathering, which the city's army has been sent out to fight to the wrong place. So Mona is now the only active magic user in the city and has to hold off a ravening mercenary army for 2 days using bread.
And you mentioned Mona's 14.
And she kicks so much ass. The stuff we did last week was basically a yeasty version of Pacific Rim, where in addition...
That's tonight's gender yeasty. Okay.
The tonight's gender, yeasty Pacific Rim. Where, she bakes 12-foot tall bread golems and puts their feet in barrels and is controlling them to just basically step on people. And she bakes what has been referred to as crookies, which are evil gingerbread men, just filled with terrible ingredients, which Spindle leads out to the enemy camp to cause horrible mischief. And it's going great, and then suddenly it isn't. And Mona suddenly realizes that they're about to be overrun, and she has two choices. She can fight, or she can pour all the remaining energy keeping her alive into a bomb made of yeast. And she's just about to do that when Knackering Mole shows up. Yeah, Bob, this is an incredible book, and I think we have every installment on the Twitch page.
Yep, there. Let me put the link in the chat again. If the complete VOD has a playlist, and you can catch up on all the installments. And if you want to buy the book,
damn, you're good.
Yes.
Yes, she is.
There we go.
There you go. So you're going to get very little from this. But if you go back and listen to all of it, you'll get a hell of a story.
The book is amazing. Please pick up a copy of the book.
Yes.
You will absolutely enjoy it.
Okay, here we go. Chapter 35. Raising my head was a greater effort than anything I had ever felt. If we hadn't lost another golem, I'm not sure I could have done it, but the little thread of energy came back to me, and I looked up. Moll held my eyes for a long moment. Hers were dark and deep, and I don't know what she read in mine. She turned away and went to Nag. He lowered his bony head, and they stood, foreheads pressed together. Living woman. Dead horse. We have to get away, Harold started to say again, and then the world jumped about 6 inches sideways, and I fell over. Mona, said Aunt Tabitha. Here, what's wrong? Asked Spindle. They both grabbed for me, and I realised that neither of them had felt it. I looked up. Molly was swaying. Nag's bones rattled. The thump. The thump. The thump. I would bet everything I will ever own that was the sound of Molly's heartbeat. She walked stiffly around Nag's side and climbed onto him. "Do you hear something?" asked Spindle. In the square, the Carracks fought the slug, and arrows hissed, and the army roared, and steel clashed. But on our side of the barricade, everything seemed strangely silent, except for Nag's bones. I heard it then. It sounded almost like running water far in the distance, coming from within the city. Knackering Molly bent low over Nag's neck. She was shaking like she was sobbing, but she made no noise at all. The sound was getting nearer, louder, deeper. If it was running water, it was a flash flood, not a stream. Molly, I said, she'd done something magical, something that had made the world jump, something huge. She smiled, just a little, flicked her fingers out in a small, ironic salute. And then the road began to shake. Buildings rattled as if the knocker were thumping into them. Aunt Tabitha yelled, "Earthquake!" But Spindle let out a whoop and pointed down the street. Knacker and Molly had called the dead horses of the city to its defense. And they had come. They were made of bone, like nag, and flashed ivory in the sun. Many of them must have broken from the ground or from underground crypts, and bits of dust and dirt still clung to them. Some were so old there were hardly any bones, just clouds of dust formed into the shape of running horses. The magic that held them together was so much stronger than anything I could do, anything I'd ever seen. It was no wonder the army had tried to recruit Molly. It was amazing they'd ever let her go. Aunt Tabitha picked up Spindle with one arm and me with the other and shoved us back against the wall. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Argonel throwing his apprentice into a doorway. The men on the barricade stood and gaped. First the slug, now this. And then some of the smarter ones realized that anyone standing in the way of that charge was going to be trampled. They scattered. And the horses hit the barricade, and it fell apart. Bone dust manes whipped behind them. Watching them leap over the remains of the wall was like watching a giant waterfall of bone. I have never seen anything like it, and if I live to be 100, I never will. "How many are there?" asked Aunt Tabitha, almost to herself. I tried to think of how many there could be. Our city is hundreds of years old, and many generations of horses have lived and died within its walls. Molly had called them all. They charged into the square, through the gate, into the Carrick's army, with Nag at their head and Moll on his back, and when the Bone army had finally passed us by, a matter of minutes, I suppose, although it seemed to go on for hours, it took a bit before any of us were willing to leave the walls. When you have seen a thing like that, a thing impossible, and glorious and horrible all at once, it takes a minute before you can really think again. "Oh," said Aunt Tabitha finally. "Oh my." It broke the spell. Spindle jumped up and down and punched the air and shouted, "Ooh-yah, you show 'em all! Give her one for Tibby!" "Is it over?" asked Argonel. "Wizard Mona, is it over?" "I haven't a clue," I admitted, testing my feet cautiously. They seemed to be working. Mostly. Should we go look? As a little knot, Harold and Argonel and Aunt Tabitha and Spindle and I, plus an apprentice and 3 or 4 guards, crept to the edge of the street. The barricade had been pounded into splinters, and we peered out cautiously. There was nothing living in the square. The slug monster oozed a slow circuit around the walls. The broken gates had been torn completely off their hinges. We inched forwards. I leaned heavily on Spindle, partly to keep from falling down, partly to keep him from running off. At the gate, we peered out over the battlefield, and it was a sea of bucking bones. Hundreds of dead horses, from full skeletons to roiling dust, were trampling across the Carracks. The greatest concentration of horses, after all, was not inside the city, but in the bone pits of the knacker yards and slaughterhouses, and those were all outside the walls. Hundreds of horses came from inside the city. Thousands rose from outside it, and they hit the Carracks like a hammer. The mercenaries were backing away from the city, trying to fight. But bones are worse than bread. If you stab a skeleton with a sword, it doesn't stop the skeleton, and the odds are good your sword will get wrenched out of your hands in the process. "They're retreating," breathed Harold. "Sweet mother of us all, they're actually retreating." Nobody was shooting from the battlements anymore. I suspect that the archers, like the rest of us, were simply staring down with slack-jawed awe. We picked our way a little further out from the wall. The road dipped a little, and we could see the skeletal army's charge laid out in front of us. An arrowhead of bone driving deeper and deeper into the enemy's ranks. "They're nearly through," said Argonel. "They're going to turn around." Harold shook his head. I don't think we're dealing with normal tactics anymore. The arrowhead pierced through the other side. The mercenary army was cut in half. And apparently that was the final straw, because as we watched, the men stopped even trying to fight back. The retreat became a rout. The rout became a desperate, scrambling flight. The Carrick's army broke and ran. When we found Molly, she was dead. I'd expected it.
Deep breath. It's all right. Take a moment.
I'll get them.
You'll...
I think I had known her since the first moment when she pressed her forehead against the neck.
It's okay. Just take a moment. You're all right.
Oh, great.
You're okay.
I did call her.
Huh? Oh, no. We're going to be right back, folks. We got a nosebleed. Hang on.
It's all right, folks. Don't worry.
Give us just a second.
Where were we? I had expected it.
Start the paragraph over, I'm afraid.
Uh-huh.
I know.
When we found Knackering Molly at last, she was dead. I had expected it. I think I'd known since the first moment she pressed her forehead against Knack's. She had done what I thought to do with the lost golem. Poured herself into the magic and driven it forward with her death. I'd still hoped I was wrong. She was lying in a little clearing in the middle of the battlefield with 500 bone horses facing inward around her, watching, and there wasn't a mark on her. She was curled up on her side, as if she'd slipped off Nag's back and collapsed from exhaustion. And I imagine that was pretty much what had happened after all. It was the magic that killed her, I said hoarsely. She always said getting mixed up with armies and generals will get you killed, said Spindle, wiping his eyes. I could tell he felt guilty for persuading her to come at all, and yet she'd saved us. If he hadn't, the Carracks would be running through the streets, even now. The Duchess and Joshua had come down from the walls, and we all walked through that silent army together. Empty eye sockets turned to follow us as we strode past, and it would have been unbelievably creepy. But I was so tired, and the Carrack's army was routed, and there was nothing to feel but relief. And grief. There was still room for grief. She saved us all, said the Duchess. Joshua leaned down and closed Molly's eyes. A great sigh filled the air. The bone horses folded up and dropped to the ground. Clouds of white dust roiled up and settled slowly around us. Nag was the only one left standing, and as we watched, he went down to his knees and stretched out his head along the ground by Knackering Molly, and then he was only old bones and rags. And that made me cry even harder. Because that was when I knew it was really over. The Duchess looked at me helplessly. Mona, you knew her. She saved us. Without the two of you, what would we do? What should we do? What would she want? Spindle and I looked at each other, but it was Spindle who spoke up. She and Nag should be buried together. Not in one of those big fancy tombs. You'd think I was stupid. Maybe a park. She would have liked a park. With a statue, perhaps. Asked the Duchess. We have to do something. Spindle and I looked at each other again, and I choked down the lump in my throat and tried very hard to talk. A statue of Nag would be okay, I said, but not a stupid one. I had to have Nag in it like he really was, not, heroic. She shouldn't have had to be a hero. No, said the Duchess, no. No one should. Joshua picked Molly up very carefully and carried her back to the city. Our city. And we all went home. Significant tea.
And a hug. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Oh, Molly.
That was hard.
I know.
That was very hard.
Ursula owes you a muffin basket.
Ursula owes me a muffin basket, y'all.
Chapter 36.
Chapter 36. The army arrived 2 days later. A day late, as it turned out, but that was okay. Most of the Carracks didn't stop running until they hit the mountains. The army got home in time to mop up some of the stragglers and most of the wounded, all of whom wanted to surrender. They got put to work rebuilding the outlying farms. The Duchess had a certain sense of poetic justice. All told, apart from Knackering Molly, we lost 7 people. 5 of those were on the barricades. 1 was an old veteran who had volunteered to help fight and whose heart gave out in the middle of the battle, and 1 guard who was found in an alley with his throat cut. We're pretty sure that was the work of the late Spring Green Man. There were a few more on the outlying farms who'd refused to evacuate, but there wasn't anything I could have done about them, and I tried very hard not to feel guilty. Joshua says that we took so few casualties. What a stupid word. There's nothing casual about it, because the golems held them off until Molly did her part, and I like to think he's right. The Golden General offered me a post in the army, but I told him I didn't want to even think about making golems for at least a year, and Aunt Tabitha pointed out I was 14 and not nearly old enough to go traipsing about with the military, which was sort of embarrassing but also a relief. It's just hard to say no to someone like the Golden General. And I was going to say no. I still liked Lord Ethan, but I wasn't going to be responsible for turning other people into heroes. Oberon's personal possessions, a ring and some papers, turned up on the battlefield, but they couldn't identify a body. Spindle had a theory about this, which includes the phrase, mangled beyond recognition. He's quite gleeful about it. I have a different theory. I think it's possible he got away and left a false trail behind him. As long as he stays far, far away from my city, that's fine. I'd like to see him punished, but even more than that, I just want him gone. Pardon me. Spindle lives with us now. We repainted the room so it's not pink and doesn't have a sampler in it. I'm not sure if he really wanted to live with us, but the Duchess threatened to knight him, and if you're going to be a knight, you have to be a squire. And when he found out that you spend all your time taking care of some guy's armour and his horse and taking lessons in chivalry, he couldn't get out fast enough. It was still a matter of the ceremony, though. Stop fidgeting, said Aunt Tabitha, straightening the folds of my dress. Don't wring your skirt in your hands, you'll get it all crumpled. It was very kind of the Duchess to do this all at once, I said faintly, trying hard not to grab handfuls of cloth and twist them. If I had to go through this for every single medal, I'd die. You won't die, said Aunt Tabitha. You'll do fine. She fussed with my hair, which was, of course, hopeless. Everybody will be looking at the Duchess, I thought, or at Spindle. Compared to Spindle, I was positively presentable. The Duchess would happily have given him a dozen suits of formal clothing, but he was having none of it. We compromised on the page's uniform he'd worn that long ago night in the palace. 2 weeks. It had been 2 weeks. I felt like I had aged so much in the last 2 weeks, I half expected my hair to start coming in white. Spindle tugged at the collar of his tunic and muttered something in thieves' cant. The gingerbread man stood on my shoulder. He had new lacing buttons for the occasion. Joshua opened the door and said, "We're ready for you." "I'm scared," I whispered. "So am I," Joshua said back. "I hate these things. You're up first, so you get to leave early. Think I'm getting made a marshal. I have to stay to the end." This made me feel a little better. At least they weren't making me a marshal. We stepped out of the room into a narrow corridor with a door at the end. Joshua opened the door, which led onto a courtyard. We were having an outdoor ceremony. 2 guards on either side clicked the butts of their halberds against the floor, and I gulped. "Straight ahead," murmured Joshua. Stop on the 3rd step of the dais next to the general. Spindle, go right behind her. Stop on the 2nd step. We walked in. I went up 3 steps, staring at my feet to make sure that I didn't trip and fall. When I reached the Golden General, I looked up. He looked just as tall as he had the first time I'd seen him, but a lot more tired. His shoulders were a little stooped, and he had lines around his eyes. And he winked at me. The Duchess stood in the middle of the dais on the highest step. "My people," she began, waving to the crowd, and then I couldn't hear her anymore, over the cheering. "Caw," muttered Spindle at my right hand. "Look, all the swells." The swells were the entire assembled court. There were a lot of nobles. I guess those were the council. Most of them looked old, richly dressed, somewhat disgruntled, but there was one plump woman who grinned at me. I think she was the representative of the various guilds. And you see, Aunt Tabitha was a guild baker, so technically I was one of her people. I wondered if having a baker save the city would have any political repercussions. Uncle Albert was in the front row, off to one side, and Aunt Tabitha came out and joined him. Argonel was there too. I'd asked if Jenny could join them, and she was wedged in behind Aunt Tabitha, and they were all grinning hugely, except for Uncle Albert. He met my eyes and nodded. I wondered what sort of ceremony they'd had when they gave him a medal for a siege that shouldn't have happened. Past all the brightly coloured nobles were several ranks of guards in shiny armour and a huge crowd of plain, ordinary citizens. My people. They were packed to the walls of the courtyard and out past the carriage drive, standing on each other's shoulders to try and get a better view. I actually saw Widow Holloway on the shoulders of Brutus the Chandler. Oh, that's a lot of people. I wondered if I was going to faint or scream or wet myself or disgrace myself in some other way, and honestly, it seemed quite likely. Blueberry muffins. Think about blueberry muffins. What's the recipe? Step 1. Get some fresh blueberries. Don't usually get a crowd like this unless there's a hanging. Shut up, Spindle. The Golden General chuckled. First time's the worst, he murmured to me. First time I won a great victory and I had to get medals, I almost wished I'd lost instead. They get easier after this. You'll see. I don't intend to do this again, I whispered. No. He arched an eyebrow at me. I expect this won't be your last set of medals, my dear. Heroism, something of a habit. It would not have occurred to me 2 weeks ago to argue with the Golden General, but I opened my mouth to do just that, and then I heard the Duchess say, Mona, the Wizard of the Bakery, step forward. And the crowd went completely wild, and Lord Ethan put a hand on my shoulder and steered me forwards. I looked up at the Duchess. She smiled down at me wearing the mask of royalty, and then she winked too. She put something over my head. It was a round disc with sheaves of wheat stamped on it. This is the silver sheaf, the highest honour our city gives out, for exceptional valour. Then there was another one, which she pinned to my chest, which had a golden lion on it, for extraordinary service to the crown. And then there was another one on a pin, which looked like an incredibly ugly bronze cow, folded into a little square for courage under fire. The crowd roared for each one. I closed my eyes and thought very firmly about muffins. It pleases us to recognise the service and exceptional courage of one of our youngest citizens. Henceforth, let it be known, Mona, Wizard of the Bakery, is appointed a royal wizard with all the rank and privileges thereof. A royal wizard, like Master Gildean and Lord Ethan, I gulped. And for you, little friend, said the Duchess, sounding remarkably like Obi-Wan Kenobi. For a second, I didn't know who she was talking to, and then, on a very small ribbon, she pulled out a medal that looked like the silver sheaf, only about the size of a penny. She placed it around the neck of the gingerbread man. You have not lived until you've seen a cookie look smug. He fell down.
Hold on. There he is.
And yes, Marguerite made the medal.
He won't stay up, but... Okay, fine. I'll take a picture of him later. Sorry, I'm ruining the moment.
Turn around, murmured the Duchess, count to 5, and then step to your left. We'll get Spindle up here, and then you can both leave. Lucky you. It occurred to me then that the Duchess probably hated these ceremonies almost as much as I did. At least I only had to do it once, no matter what the Golden General might think. I turned around. The crowd cheered so loudly it actually no longer sounded like voices. And I will tell you that just for 1 minute there, I bought into it. Just a little. My city, right there. I almost forgot to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Spindle came up, and he got the lion and the folded-up cow and the bronze sheaf for slightly less extraordinary service to the crown. He didn't seem to mind. The crowd cheered for him too, and Jenny blew kisses from behind Argonel. And then the cheering faded, and Harold, who was standing on the far side of the stage, beckoned, and we were walked down the dais and through the door, and were finally allowed to go home for good. Significant tea. Chapter 37. Things do go back to normal. Eventually. Joshua comes in sometimes for muffins. Once or twice I've been up to the palace to have tea with the Duchess. It's awkward, not so much because she's the Duchess, but because after everything was over, I realised I was still angry at her for not being braver or smarter or more something. When you're in charge of the whole city, you're responsible. It shouldn't be up to a couple of kids and a mad woman on a bone horse to fix the mess you allowed to happen. But then I go have tea and I look at her and I don't know if she really could have fixed it. She's only in charge because she inherited the city, the same way I'll inherit the bakery. I think maybe she's not as good at ruling as I am at baking, and then I don't know what to think or who to be mad at anymore, and I get really confused. I did hear from Jenny that something's gone a bit odd in the palace kitchens. Something keeps knocking over the pepper shakers and putting salt in the sugar bowl. One night it tied all the aprons in the place together and hung them on the roasting spit. I think it might be one of the bad cookies. I thought I pulled all the magic out, but, it was a frantic time. Maybe one squeaked by. One of these days I'll go to the kitchens and get to the bottom of things. If the cook asks me nicely. As for me, I work at the bakery, and I'm glad to do it. Sometimes people come in to see the medals and talk to one of the heroes of the Dead Horse War. But more often, they come in for muffins and scones and gingerbread. We still have the best sourdough in the city, even though Bob's experience in battle has made him extra rambunctious, and we have to feed him on the end of a pole, which he sometimes dissolves. Uncle Albert won't even go in the cellar now. My own special gingerbread cookie is with me still. He stands guard on a shelf over the bakery counter and keeps a careful eye on the customers. Oberon and the Spring Green Man may be gone, but you never know. The Golden General took me aside a few days after the battle. I told him what Marstigal Dayan had said about him, and he laughed. It's all true, he said. He didn't look nearly as much like a young sun god in his office with his boots up on the desk. I really couldn't hold off an army by myself. You, though. His eyes were fixed on my face. You did for quite a long time. An hour or two. An hour in battle is an eternity, said Lord Ethan. He took his feet off the desk and leaned forwards. You need to be trained. Magic like that is too powerful to waste. I don't want to end up like Molly. I said. Government wizard, she called Lord Ethan. No good for the likes of you and me. And yet, the Golden General, hero of the realm. Ethan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. That poor woman, power like that. Well, I wasn't even a raw recruit when she went into battle, and I shudder to think how they mishandled her. We failed her. I want to make sure that we do not fail you. I stared at my hands. I meant what I said at the ceremony, he said. When I looked up, he had a rueful smile, the sort you give to a friend or a colleague, not a little kid. Heroism is a bad habit. Once you've done it, other people start to expect it, and if the city's in danger again, everybody will remember that you saved them last time, and they'll forget all the nasty, exhausting bits where you nearly died and had to sleep for a week, and your headache didn't go away for 3 days, and it was only 2 days, I mumbled. The headache in question had hit me like a ton of bricks on the walk off the battlefield. Joshua had actually carried me to bed. Apparently that's normal with magic when you really, really overdo it. Well, you're young. If I tried magic like that now, I'd have to hope it killed me, because recuperating from it would be worse. I snorted. Come up to the palace when you can, he said, and said it kindly. We'll give you some training. You might find it useful. We're not going to drag you off. If we tried, your aunt would have something to say, and Lord, I'd much rather face the Carracks. He shuddered theatrically, and I had to laugh, but it didn't last long. The Duchess, I began, without knowing how I even wanted to finish the sentence. Yes. If she just stopped Oberon, I cried. I felt like something had been building in my chest since knackering Molly died. I wanted to scream or weep or rage or something to make sense of it all. Why didn't she stop it? Why didn't anyone stop it? His eyes flicked to the door. I think he was making sure that it was closed and no one was listening. It occurred to me then that what I had just said might be treason. I had said it to the man in charge of the army. Maybe his next words were going to be to tell me to shut up or be thrown in the dungeon. Instead, he looked straight at me and said, I know. I put my head in my hands and stared at the floor. The carpet had a pattern of interlocking lightning bolts. The Golden General sighed. I have been exactly where you are. But what can we do? You can't put the military in charge of the city. We're useful servants, but we are terrible masters. And if I took it in my head to declare myself a wizard emperor, like Elgar dreamed of doing, well, I hope like hell someone would stop me. We met each other's eyes and then we both looked away. After a minute I said, I never wanted to be a hero. His face was solemn. Nobody ever does. I probably will go up to the palace to learn at least a few things. There's a lot of concepts in Spiraling Shadows I still don't understand, and the general was right about one thing. Nobody was going to forget who saved them. You never know when somebody's going to need you to defend the city, but learning is as far as I'm willing to go. Molly was right. People in power can crush you like a bug. I don't want to be crushed, and I also don't want to be in the position to crush anyone else. At the moment, though, all I want to do is make muffins and bread and learn to be the best baker in the city, because magic is exhausting. So if you ever happen to be passing down Market Street before you get into the Rat's Elbow, take the turn onto Wolfish and go down about half a block. You'll find yourself at the very best bakery in the city, and if I'm in a good mood, and if you ask very nicely, I might even make the gingerbread men get up and dance. Thank you.
Go ahead and read the acknowledgements.
I will. Acknowledgements. Mona's story took longer to get into book form than almost any other project I have ever worked on. I began it at the tail end of 2007. I didn't know how to bake. I still don't. But I bought a KitchenAid mixer and began grimly following recipes, not so much because I wanted to become a baker as because I needed to understand how dough felt and what it did when you shoved your fingers into it. The route that Bread Wizard book took to publication went from pillar to post and back again. It was bought, edited, re-edited, dropped, abandoned, handed off to other editors, sold back to me, pitched again by my unfailingly optimistic agent, and editor after editor could not figure it out. Many of them liked it, but what would they do with it? It needed to be darker. No, darker. No, wait, that's too dark. Mona was too old. Mona was too young. Mona was the correct age, but now sounded too old and needed to be made sweeter. Did I really need to start with a dead girl? Could we maybe ease into the whole dead body situation? Ultimately, the problem was that it was a fairly dark children's book, and I, under the name Ursula Vernon, was a writer of whimsical, upbeat books. If a publisher bought it, they would need me to write about 4 other books first before they could slip it into the lineup, or else my brand would be in limbo. Mind you, I have always felt that kids like much darker books than adults are comfortable handing them, but I also understand that parents and librarians are the ones who control the book buying, and a weird little anti-establishment book with carnivorous sourdough and armies of dead horses was probably a hard sell. So eventually I just published it myself, as T. Kingfisher, whose brand is mostly things I felt like writing. Minor Mage, my first kids' book that was also too dark to really be a kids' book, found an enthusiastic audience. I hope that A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking does as well. Ironically, I am publishing this in the midst of COVID-19, when we are all starting to make sourdough at home and then protesting... I've completely screwed the sentence. Ironically, I am publishing this in the midst of COVID-19, when we all started making sourdough at home and then started protesting police brutality. Suddenly, a 12-year-old book was actually relevant. Go figure. Thanks go as always to the lovely guys at Argyle for putting out the print volume, to my awesome proofreaders Jess and Cassie, and my long-suffering editor KB, to Shepherd for insisting that it was good. Really? Even if they did try to change monarch into parasite on the working class in the edits. And as always, to my beloved Kevin, who reads things when I am panicking and convinced everything is awful. You are all wonderful, and I love you like gingerbread loves spice. T. Kingfisher, North Carolina, June 2020. And there we go.
Yay!
That's a book, huh?
Oh, you okay?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Let's all take a deep breath. That ending gets to you. It's really intense.
It's a book about a 14-year-old bread wizard and also about PTSD.
It's about a lot of things, yeah. And I have a feeling it's going to be a really long Q&A session with Ursula, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I also have a very strong feeling she's not done.
Oh no. I really hope Mona makes a return. Wouldn't that be glorious?
There's lots of stuff in the kind of wizard textbook she borrows.
That follows her home.
I actually really like that last exchange with Lord Ethan, who, and I agree, Eldritch, he very clearly is Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion is the new Bruce Campbell, so
yes.
Yeah, that works.
I really like that she basically goes, what? This is bullshit. Why did this happen? And he's like, I know. I'm so sorry. That and the stuff with her uncle and just...
Given the references in the book, I wouldn't be surprised if a sequel is, okay, we're going to move away from feudalism into the early Industrial Revolution and start to talk about some of that kind of stuff. That sounds like a very Ursula thing to do.
Bob is propellant. Bob is ambulatory lubricant.
Oh, those are two words that
just like just think about it. An engine powered by Bob.
I do not want to think about the combination of the words ambulatory and lubricant. I am banning that from my mind.
This week's gender. Zalia says I was honestly impressed with Lord Ethan talking about how the army also can't be given too much power. Yet, what an incredibly courageous thing. You have this guy who's in charge of the army and has genuine, huge amounts of magical ability going, I can't do this. I'm a gun. You point me somewhere, and I'm good at it, and that's it.
Yeah. Ursula's very, 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 very good. By the time we do her interview, I will pull up some more of her books, both her Ursula Vernon books and her T. Kingfisher books, so that we have more of a bibliography.
I'm actually looking at the copy of her most recent horror novel.
Oh,
which
do we have it here?
Yeah, it should be in that stack.
Hang on, let me dig through this one. Here it is. There you go.
Oh, hey, look, animal bones. I am detecting a brand.
You want to read the
yeah.
the blurb on the back?
Kara finds the words in the mysterious book.
Ooh, it's really dark.
It is. Pray that they are hungry. Kara finds the words in the mysterious bunker that she's discovered behind a hole in the wall of her uncle's house. Freshly divorced and living back at home, Kara has become obsessed with these cryptic words and starts exploring this peculiar area, only to discover that it holds portals to countless alternate realities. But these places are haunted by creatures that seem to hear thoughts, and the more one fears them, the stronger they become. With her distinctive, delightfully fresh and subversive prose, and the strange, sinister wonder found in Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth, The Hollow Places is a compelling and white-knuckled horror novel that you won't be able to put down.
Or read at bedtime.
Or read at bedtime, because then it will get you.
Ozzy's asked a really good question about recommendations of some other of her books for people who love Wizard's Guide, and I don't know the answer to that. But
I have a couple of quite good places for you to start. She's done a lot of short fiction, which, in a moment of horrendous self-service, escape artist.
Yeah.
have run quite a lot of. If you go to escapeartists.net,
Let me see if I can do that real quick.
we'll see if we can pull up a list for you.
I know she's done on a Cast of Wonders. I'll try to remember the rest. Oh no! The calligrapher has done ambulatory lubricant!
Yes!
Oh no! I love the color ink. I hate the phrase.
The other thing which you might want to take a look at is Digger.
Oh, Digger!
Digger is final conclusive proof that Ursula is ridiculously talented, because it is her webcomic, which she also drew as well as wrote, about a very chirpy, I believe she's a wombat. Yes.
I believe Digger is a wombat, correct.
Wombat engineer in a very weird pseudo-post-apocalyptic society.
Hang on, I gotta find... Give me just a second and I will find some of Ursula's short fiction. And then I will turn on the poll. And we can have a... Why don't you have a chat about the options for the poll? Do you remember what they are?
I do, because
They are in your document.
I have them in front of me, because I'm totes profesh. Totes profesh. Okay, so we have some options for what we could do next week. We could chat in some detail about Wizard's Guide. Brilliantly, a friend of mine located a whole bunch of other search and rescue stories. You remember those from a few months ago?
From a long time ago.
Almost from before COVID.
Let me see if Ursula has a short story collection.
And we were wondering whether people might want to hear some of those. There's also, we can maybe do a longer form AO3 piece, obviously within limits, not like a 15,000 word thing or anything like that. We could do an added book.
Well, it's not just length that we're going to have to keep an eye on.
There's also,
content.
Yeah.
It has to be PG-13-ish.
And there is also, maybe we could stream a game, like for example, Marguerite could create her Baldur's Gate 3 character.
Or you could play Hades.
Or I could play Hades.
Which you haven't played at all yet.
Or we have a Dark Week.
I.e. you actually get a break. Okay, so I'm putting in the chat. This is Ursula's website. List of short stories. Several of them are absolute award winners. If you want somewhere to start, I love Jackalope Wives.
And Pockeson.
I've already put Pockeson in the chat. And by the way, Jackalope Wives was read aloud by LeVar Burton.
LeVar freaking Burton.
Yeah. Oh. Do people know who LeVar Burton is?
Those of you who do not know who LeVar Burton is, you know who LeVar Burton is. If you grew up in the US, then you know him as the star producer, creator of Reading Rainbow, the most important child's literacy show in Western cultural history. If you are a Star Trek fan, you know him as Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge, the man who spent 8 heroic years with a hair visor over his eyes and finally got upgraded to some halfway decent-looking cyber optics just in time for the movies.
And if you are even older than us, you know him as Kunta Kinte from Roots.
He's also notable for 2 transcendentally brilliant cameo appearances in Community as himself, where Troy is punished because the evil member of the group basically gives them all what they want. And Troy really wanted a signed photo of LeVar Burton, so instead he has him shipped in, and Troy just can't move or speak. And it is a thing of beauty, it truly is.
So there's some of Ursula's short fiction. I don't know if she has a collection. I'm going to put that on the list of research as well. See? Look! Making me work. I love it. Collection. Question mark. But, Jackalope Wives and Tomato Thief, I think, are all in the same universe.
Yeah.
And there's a side character in the Tomato Thief that I desperately tried to get her to write a longer story about because I loved it so much. Okay.
Well, there's a beautiful turn of phrase, Troy's 404 face throughout that entire first cameo, just that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good way.
Hey, hon, I have a really stupid idea.
Oh no.
Was Ursula one of the people who finished their Space Marine midwife story?
Yes, and I don't know what's become of it. But we could ask. I could ask.
That is plot face.
I could definitely ask what happened to that. It didn't wind up in the Escape Pod anthology, did it?
If only we had a copy nearby.
Oh wait, I'm holding it. Yeah, exactly. Vamp.
So yeah, that's a hell of a book. That I really dug that, and I'm only slightly kind of, you put all the feels at the end. It's like when all the chocolate chips sink to the bottom.
Hold on a second. Oh no, this is it.
So we have it.
This is the Space Marine midwife story.
So we have it.
It's in here. Yeah, exactly.
You'll want an Ursula short story next week? Because we know
there's one in here.
Because we know the licensors. You know, we literally know where those fools live.
Oh yeah. We literally own the audio rights to the story. Oh my god, you're brilliant. Wow. Awesome. Okay, cool. There's my backup plan. Should we run the poll? Let's run the poll. Okay. Let's run the poll, and then you can commit fictional crimes.
It's my favorite type.
5 minutes, you think? 10 minutes?
Make sure the Space Marine midwives option is on there.
Oh, hang on. I have to. I don't think I've run out of options.
Oh, fantastic. Widmore actually got their copy of the EP anthology in the post today.
Hooray! That's fantastic.
I must have bored you with this already, because I've done it on the Sunday chat at least twice. The reason why the delivery is staggered in the US is so many people have ordered Obama's book. Like, there's basically an entire freighter full of Obama's book steaming to the US from Europe, and every publishing deadline has been shifted as a result, and that means we have a legitimate thanks Obama, and I will never ever be over that. That is so cool.
Ozzy, give me just 1 second, and I will put the link to the Escape Pod short story anthology in the chat. I just gotta dig up the link real quick.
A plan crisis.
Alright, I've done another Ursula story star because I gotta double check.
Okay.
But I'm gonna run the poll for 10 minutes so that you can take care of it while you're doing shenanigans. There we go. The poll is on. Go. And I will get that link for the chat.
First off, we have the brilliant...
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I have to put the fan... Push the shenanigans button.
I did.
Oh, you did? Do it again. It's not showing up. Maybe it doesn't like it. Alright. Ah! There we go. There's the shenanigans.
You meant the other shenanigans button, didn't you?
Well, you can go to the scene as well, but
okay.
also the shenanigans anthology. Here it is! Sorry.
Okay.
Escape Pod anthology. Cool. You may go now.
Very well. So first off, we have Bongos by Be Gay, Write Poetry. Peter, why are you like this? What's wrong? No one wants to see that. Then why are you looking? I'm glaring. Put it away. This is my room too, you know. Peter, you're just jealous you can't bongo. May have done that a couple of times.
Yeah, bongos may be a thing. Totally a thing. Though you do need like a black action polo.
Just tactical polo.
Tactical turtleneck works even better.
We're watching White Collar at the moment, and it's taken a season and a half for Neil to bust out the tactical turtleneck. I choose to believe he shops at the same locations as Archer. Lana! Danger Zone!
Yes, that happens a lot. Yes, Specky, we just started. We're almost at the end of season 2. So, Cons with a Heart of Gold
are basically your catnip, aren't they?
Are how I'm dealing with stress right now. And we watched all of Hustle, and I have all of Leverage committed to memory. So we're going to start on White Collar, And then we might watch Psych and or Burn Notice.
Yes. Having seen the trailer for one of the Psych movies where Dulé Hill introduces the pair of them as, "Hello, I'm Burton Guster and this is my partner, White Privilege." Any TV show which includes the line, "Come on, Gus, don't be the third Thompson twin," just hits me in my core. So our final piece of shenanigans for you tonight is Loopholes in Rules Lawyering by Zalia Chimera. "Are you sure this is a good idea, John?" Martin is giving him one of those looks, concern that is partly for him and partly for anyone who might get caught in the crossfire. John shrugs helplessly. "No, I mean, I'm not sure that anything I do is a good idea, but I can't just sit here and not do anything." Well, theoretically he could, but he doesn't think that's necessarily a better option than doing something, no matter how small. Eventually, he'll get hungry. Eventually, they'll run out of paper statements. Or they'll stop being enough. Or something will come after them. "Yeah, I know," Martin says. He sighs and then smiles, and he looks tired but so much brighter than he had a couple of months ago, when he'd been washed out, pale like sea foam, with a gaze that never seemed to really see people. "All right, then, I guess we better head off. It's a bit of a walk into the village." He leans down to kiss John's cheek, a motion that is becoming a wonderful habit, and then goes upstairs to grab them both chompers. John stretches, bones cracking, and goes to the door to pull his boots on. They're new, sturdy ones, designed for walking through mud and rough ground. It had only taken a couple of days to realise how unsuitable their office footwear was for where they were living now. They're coupled with thick wool socks, and the socks already have a fine layer of dried mud, like seasoning on cast iron. He likes them a lot. He's never been the outdoorsy type, to absolutely no one's surprise, and he's hardly planning to climb a mountain or go camping, but he's enjoying exploring the area they've settled in. It makes him ache in a way that is completely unlike the aches and pains from hunching over a desk all day and getting jostled on the tube. Martin thunders back down the stairs and lays a thick woolly jumper over the back of John's chair while he goes to put on his own boots, and John takes a moment to just enjoy the sight of him. The curve of his back as he stoops to pull on those sturdy boots, tying the laces with thick, elegant fingers. The dregs of the sunlight have turned his hair golden, and the tip of his tongue pokes out between his lips. He is lovely, and John once again wonders how he is so lucky. "Something wrong?" Martin asks, glancing over at John. "Just looking at the extremely lovely man standing in our porch." Martin's cheeks flare red. "Well, you should tell him to get lost, you're taken." "I think he gets the idea," John replies, and he wants to watch the pattern of Martin's blush forever. Martin huffs a soft laugh and pushes the hair out of his face. "Come on, then. We don't want to be late." He offers John a hand up, and John takes it, clasping their hands together. He only lets go to pull on the jumper, and he grabs Martin's hand again as soon as that's done, keeping tight hold, even when Martin shoves raincoats into his rucksack along with torches and a thermos of tea, just in case. It's already getting dark when they step outside, the light a sliver against the horizon. The air is cool and crisp in a way that you didn't get in London, except in the very early morning before it burned off in exhaust fumes. He takes a deep breath of it, lets it fill his lungs as though it can clean out some of the years of grime and tar from living in the city. And then John twines his fingers with Martin's, and they set off. It isn't a long walk into the village. 20 minutes or so if they walk at a steady pace, 15 if they realise they're short of milk for tea. The road is more of a track, hard compacted dirt and stones, and it's only tarmacked about halfway to the village where there's the turn-off for the farm. It is at least dry today, so the mud is more gravelly than slippy. "What do we do if this goes wrong?" Martin asks when they reach the outskirts of the village, where the streetlights start to leave bright spots on the pavement. John shrugs. "I'm only asking questions," John says, "and it's a parish council meeting, not negotiations with a crime lord. I don't know. There's stern letters to the local paper. They can get pretty cutting. Martin says, giving him a sceptical look, which melts into a grin. John bumps his shoulder against Martin's, sending him a little off balance. It means he grabs onto John in an exaggerated attempt to remain upright, and then nuzzles his face against John's shoulder. Arse? You like my arse? John replies. Martin gives a heavy, long-suffering sigh. I do. It's a burden I must bear. Love you too. He squeezes Martin's hand and turns his head to kiss his cheek. Feels nice doing this. Flirting, having silly little joke arguments that mean nothing and mean I love you all at once. He never expected to get that. It still feels fragile, delicate, like spun glass. He'd seen pictures of a performance art piece once, a woman holding a bow arrow aimed at her heart, her lover holding the string taut and ready to fire. Absolute trust, absolute vulnerability, but John thinks that this, with Martin, is the first time he's been able to relax his grip on the bow in a long time. They reach the village hall, pardon me. It's a small stone building, one floor, and that's still a bit odd after London, where the trend is upwards and packed tight. He keeps his hand curled with Martin's as they step in. There's only a small entrance room, bathrooms and a small kitchen, and then the main hall opens up. Rows of blue plastic seats that remind John strongly of primary school assemblies, the ones that his grandmother had tried to attend, but had given up when both she and John realised that it was an intensely awkward experience. He sometimes wonders as if she had been as uncomfortable with the pity from the teachers and other parents as he had been. He'd never thought to ask. He'd always been a rather selfish and difficult child. They take seats at the back of the hall. They're not the last people there, but it's clear the meeting will be starting soon. There are still empty seats, but it seems really rather well attended for a community council meeting. John recognises a few people. There's a nice older lady who runs the tiny second-hand bookshop, and the manager of the local library. Martin greets a couple of people as they walk past. He's more familiar with them. John tends to avoid the busier shops, just in case. Finally, the meeting is called to order, and the chatter dies away as they jump in to talk about the minutiae of daily administration. John hadn't realised that so much went into running an area. There's a new bin to be installed, and someone on the council had been on GDPR training and reported back on that. High five!
Well done!
Throughout the meeting, John's gaze is drawn inexorably to the man in the neat press suit at the table at the front, where the councillors sit. Andrew Welsby. That's his name, but John would have known it was him anyway. He has that aura. That aura that John can't really explain in words, but he knows. He knows it's there. He tastes it. He tastes like secrets, and secrets are what John deals in. John keeps his eyes on Andrew Welsby as he talks about planning applications. He's very mundane looking. John isn't sure why that surprises him. He's met actual monsters who look like people. He is an actual monster who looks like a person. He licks his lips in anticipation, but he has to hold off, just for a bit. He doesn't even know if this will work. It's probably a stupid idea, trying to twist the dubious gifts of a monstrous being to favourable ends. Hubristic at best, and he startles when Martin elbows him in the ribs. What? It's open floor, John. Martin hisses. You know, you wanted to ask a question. Oh, yes. He can feel anticipation flutter in his stomach at the thought. He practically squirms in his seat as they sit through a young couple asking about something to do with school fundraising, and the 10-minute discussion that follows, and then, finally, it's his turn. He stands up and fixes the councillors with an intent gaze. He knows that can be off-putting, and a few of them shift uncomfortably. I have a question for Mr. Welsby. he says, his voice clear in the room despite not making use of a microphone. It's not even supernatural. The theatre group at Oxford was definitely responsible for this. Andrew Welsby smiles, confident and secure, and that anticipation grows, curling in John's belly and wrapping around his throat and tongue and vocal cords, because something will be revealed. Secrets prized open. Secrets exposed. Mr. Welsby, he says, and the power prickles on his tongue like needles and fireworks. Why are you supporting the application from Amsteer International to build a golf course here? Welsby smiles charmingly, and then he opens his mouth and the truth spills out. Well, because they're giving me a lot of money and a position on the board to push their application through and get rid of any objections. For a moment, there is silence. It's the sort of silence, John thinks, that falls after you find out someone's had an affair in one of those gritty BBC dramas. They'd always made him want to crawl out of his skin with discomfort when he watches them, but now, when he can feel the fear starting to drift off Welsby, it's like seeing the best meal in the world carried to your table in a Michelin-starred restaurant. Welsby's expression shifts and warps from smug confidence to shock to slow, dawning horror as he realizes what he has blurted out, as he realizes that he has more attention from the room than he has ever dreamed of, and all of that attention is hostile. Well, he doesn't get a chance to speak. Before there are more questions, John doesn't even have to ask. Everyone else in the room does that for him, tearing into the man. Apparently, the golf course has been a sore spot for a while, a source of conflict and stress, and finding out that bribery and corruption is involved is, well, it's intense. And John drinks it all in. The shouting of the people blends into white noise around him, and he doesn't even notice much beyond the lulling wash of fear and secrets dragged out into the cruel light until Martin shakes his shoulder. He gives a soft noise and then blinks, dragging himself piece by piece back to his own form and own mind. Martin is leaning in close, looking at him with eyes narrowed with concern. John, he wants to lose himself in this exquisite terror again, wants to drag out and expose every secret in this room and lay them bare and bloody. We should go, Martin says, and he smiles and touches John's cheek before they start asking us questions. Oh, right. Yes, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Before they decide they want to know how he'd known what to ask. Before Andrew Welsby decides to look for the person who made him speak. Yes, that sounds like a plan. In the midst of the heated discussions, it's very easy for them to slip out. They don't even get the promised tea and biscuits from the meeting. They have the nice sort too, the crumbly ones, with the cream filling. Martin notices John's longing look, and they stop in at the shop on the way home and pick up a packet of the biscuits. Talia! Aww!
Biscuits! Aww!
It's full dark by now, and the moon only dim. It's a fair trade-off, though, because once they get to the track back to their cottage, the stars are amazing. They can see the Milky Way this far out, hazy stripes in the darkness. Feeling better? Martin asks when they pause to break out one of the torches. John takes his hand when it's offered. He considers that, head slightly tilted in consideration. His body doesn't thrum with need anymore, and the gnawing, desperate hunger has subsided. A little. It's not gone. John doesn't think it will ever be gone entirely, just the background noise of his life, but it's calmer now, as close to sated as he gets. Yes, I think I am. Martin's smile is lovely, and John can't resist pushing himself up to kiss the corner of his mouth lightly. So what's next? Martin asks. Today, a local councillor in a tiny village in Scotland. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister? He's teasing, but John hums thoughtfully. I do know someone who works for the Times. We went to university together. He's a bit of a prick, but I'm sure there's stories he'd love to break. Martin chuckles softly, and they set off walking again, hand in hand. Well, we've got tomorrow to think about that, I suppose. Maybe let this die down a bit first, John agrees. It's not an unambiguous good that John's done. He doesn't think he's capable of that. Maybe he never was. Maybe no one is. He's still using evil powers to cause fear, which he gains nourishment from, which he feeds on. People smarter than him have debated and philosophized the merits of utilitarianism and ethics for centuries without a single conclusive answer. But doing nothing is a choice too. And maybe if he can snatch some small good from this, it's better than nothing. Damn, Zalia.
Oh, that is the sweetest thing.
That's really good.
I like that. It's nice and soft, and it gets one back, and it's a good day to thumb the nose of the orange one. So
Exactly.
I will take it.
Exactly.
Very, very, very take it.
That's what we have for you today, folks. I believe we have a winner in the chat.
The winner in the chat is first choice is another Ursula story. I need to double check the rights on that and just clear it with her so she knows. But I think that would be fine. And the second choice was you having a day off. So we might interpret that as we'll have a pretty short stream next week.
That works.
Given what the last couple of days have been like.
Okay, cool. Those are good choices. Well done, chat. Thank you so much for joining us. You can see us again this Sunday when I'm hesitant to jinx it, but we might be finishing Windbound.
Oh, I don't know. It depends on that shark, man.
Jesus. And then immediately replaying it again because we must have the Sea Witch.
Yes, apparently there's a hidden costume that you can get now.
Yes.
As well.
But yes, please join us from 10 a.m. for a couple of hours of Windbound
On Sunday.
And then we'll be back here next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, for probably a slightly truncated show.
Yep.
But more fun and games with Ursula. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. It means an awful lot. And thank you to Marguerite, because you're amazing.
And I will send some photos of the various costumes in the chat. And that's it.
We'll see you on Sunday, folks.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Thank you.